So I think I need to be a co-host today because I'm the welcomer.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Albany. My name is Reverend Sam Trumbore. Before we begin, please check to make sure your microphone is muted. The same for your camera. If your image is potentially distracting or embarrassing, please also be mindful of your speech while on Zoom, as microphones have a way of accidentally getting unmuted. This will minimize any disruption of our service. Thanks so much for your cooperation. This is now the time of transition from ordinary time to sacred time. Take a deep breath. Slowly in and slowly out. Settle into your chair or sofa or bed or whatever supports your body as you are hearing my words. Adjust the sound and screen so it's comfortable and you can hear and see clearly. May your physical surroundings be for you a quiet place, away from the din. May this virtual space be your sanctuary for the next hour. Zoom will present to you a frame for that space to hold the representations, sounds, music, the songs, poetry, and prose, to lift your heart, broaden your mind, and move you to do justice in the world in the service of building beloved community. While we cannot physically be present together this morning, may this virtual service be holy and sacred time for each of us as we join together in the celebration of life. And our prelude, Lift Every Voice and Sing by James Weldon Johnson. Let us light our chalice with the words that you'll see on your screen. Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community. And we have a chance to sing. The election is a little over a week away. Candidates are barnstorming the swing states and making their last-minute pitches. Hard to imagine there are undecided voters out there, but I guess there must be. Millions have already voted by mail and in person. I saw long lines outside at an early voting location at the Lutheran Church in Del Mar on Saturday, so I know people are doing it. I don't know about you, but I'm about ready for this election to be over. I dearly hope it will be over on November 4th. I know many of us will be turning out for demonstrations on November 4th if there are problems and a refusal to accept the results.
let us today step back from the electoral process and consider democracy itself. What do we want our democracy to look like? I believe Unitarian Universalism and Unitarian Universalists have something to say about that. First, though, let's have a wisdom story with Leah.
Our story today is called I Need a Lunchbox by Jeanette Keynes, illustrated by Pat Hutchins. My sister Doris got a brand new lunchbox. I need a lunchbox too, but Mommy said no lunchbox until I start school. Last week Daddy bought us new shoes. Brown school shoes for Doris. Black sneakers with yellow laces for me. We walked past the lunchbox counter twice. I need a lunchbox. Doris got a pencil case with a ruler, 2 new pencils, and 2 pink erasers. All I got was a coloring book about spacemen and a box of crayons, but no lunchbox. Yesterday, Doris got book covers, a raincoat, and an umbrella, all because she is going to first grade. If I had a lunchbox, I could keep my crayons in it, or my marbles, or my bug collection, or toy animals. I dreamed I have 5 lunchboxes, 1 for every day. Blue for Monday. Green for Tuesday. And red for Wednesday. Purple for Thursday. And yellow for Friday. I filled them with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, apples, oranges, chocolate cookies, pies, and donuts. And then we had a lunchbox parade. Doris starts school today. I sort of felt sad when Mommy handed Doris her new lunchbox. But then Daddy said, I have a surprise for you. Wow, I got a lunchbox too. And that's the end of the story. I wanted to tell a story today that was written by a Black author and about a Black family because some of us tend to read stories or listen to ones mostly about the dominant white culture. And our theme of deep listening can invite us to broad listening. We can think about which voices we are choosing to listen to and broaden our choices. And I like this story because of that child who wanted a lunchbox and kept speaking up until his voice was heard.
And I have a few readings for us this morning. First, a couple of quotes. And I think we're going to go to the slides so we can see those readings and everybody can read them together and see them together.
I can hardly hear you.
I got my volume pretty high. So, quotes on democracy and covenant. As Unitarian Universalists, This is an elevator speech published in the UU World. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person and seek to build a peaceful, just, and compassionate society. At the heart of our faith, therefore, is a commitment to democracy, not only as a form of government, but as a moral value that lifts our lives beyond the self-centered and mundane and gives meaning to our existence. And this from Reverend Dr. Michael Schuler. Unitarian Universalist congregations offer unique examples of covenantal communities where the authority over various aspects of community is governed by agreements of relationship rather than brokering of power. And our next slide has the introduction to the proposed covenant we're going to be talking about after the service this Sunday. Our proposed congregational covenant begins with this introduction. Our living tradition calls us to be in covenant. For Unitarian Universalists, a congregational covenant reflects our aspirations and commitments to one another and to ourselves. In a congregational community, in a covenantal community, each of us is empowered and has the responsibility to help one another as we seek to create a loving, supportive, and affirming community in which to grow in spirit and service. And the next slide has our proposed covenant on it. As a congregation with respect for our past and commitment to the future, we draw from the depth and power of our hearts and minds, guided by our Unitarian Universalist principles to serve our mission and vision. We celebrate the diversity of our identities and experiences and foster a culture of appreciation, inspiration, and kindness. We honor both the strength of the collective and the uniqueness of the individual, willing to support and challenge each other with love and compassion. We entrust ourselves to each other in beloved community to embolden personal and congregational growth and transformation. Here in the readings. And my meditation this morning allows us to go deeper with the words and phrases in this covenant proposal. The people who developed this proposal put a lot of time and energy into crafting this language. These words are charged with meaning. Hear each phrase, savor it, ponder it, and watch for what feelings and emotions arise as you hear it. Let us turn inward. Respect for our past. Commitment to the future. Depth, power, hearts, minds. Diversity of our identities. Culture of appreciation, inspiration, kindness. Support and challenge. love, and compassion. Entrust ourselves. Beloved community, embolden. Growth and transformation. Let us take these words and our own thoughts, reflections, and prayers into a time of silent meditation. Churchill, quoting another predecessor, said, "Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." As I outlined briefly in last week's service, our democracy is getting one of its most severe tests in recent memory. Many of us are saying to ourselves, this isn't what democracy should look like. The struggle for power is always a rough and tumble process. The stakes are high and people's lives and livelihoods hang in the balance. Yet what distinguishes a democratic approach is the reliance on words to resolve differences rather than fists. We are a nation of laws. Words govern the actions of the enforcement arms of government, not autocratic rule. We rely on our courts to be the final authority rather than who has the biggest gun. Or at least that's the theory. What has been challenging about this president has been his unwillingness to be bound by any traditions, customs, habits, or authority beyond his own impulse. He has all the answers and middle ground. What this president has helped many of us recognize is the need to make explicit what has been somewhat implicit about what we want in a democracy. Our Unitarian Universalist values found in our purposes and principles provide a strong base for what is implicit in American democracy. Our religious tradition is the repository of these precious values that evolved alongside the growth and development of our nation. Implicit in the right to vote is the assumption of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Being entrusted with the ability to elect our leaders assumes each of us has the capacity for discernment. Each adult is granted the ability to influence which candidate will govern us. Not everyone exercises this trust to its full potential, of course. Not enough people study each candidate carefully and review their policies and promises. Many dishonor this public trust by not paying any attention to the issues of the day and not voting. But enough do participate to hold those in public office accountable. There is always the threat that the people will rise up and throw the bums out. Once in office, we expect, even demand, that they conduct themselves following our second principle, valuing justice, equity, and compassion as they do the people's business. Whether you are a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Working Families, or Green Party affiliate, you want your elected officials to be fair, change systems of inequality, and compassionately help those who are disadvantaged by their life circumstances. Unfortunately, one of the built-in flaws of democracy is the ability of the majority to oppress the minority. When the minority and majority flip back and forth, there is the tendency for tolerance and moderation to develop. But in the case of permanent marginalized minorities, for example, around race, identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, these folks are at risk for tyranny. Unitarian Universalism says no. It argues for acceptance in our third principle and the right of conscience in the fifth principle. We should not be bound by the laws that violate our identity and corrupt our deeply held personal values and beliefs. Our sixth principle goes further when it advocates for world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Implicit in this principle, as in our others, is the valuing of diversity. No matter who you are, where you live, what your racial, genetic, ethnic, cultural, or religious background or heritage, you deserve acceptance and inclusion too. Everyone deserves peace, liberty, and justice. And finally, our seventh principle extends the respect we offer each other to all life on this planet. We cannot govern ourselves without considering the effects of our actions on the environment and the sustainability of life on this planet. We must be stewards of the bounty of the earth, not the consumers and destroyers of the earth's ability to support life. Our congregation doesn't just promote these values in our society, we practice them in our congregation. Our members are the deciders, electing our officers, calling ministers, raising the money for our operations, and approving our yearly budget. We take public positions on issues through congregational vote. There's a deeper way we strive to actualize democracy. We strive to build a healthy, affirming, welcoming community that goes further than majority-minority division. We want to go beyond tolerating our differences to appreciating and even celebrating them. Rather than demanding in discomfort rather than remaining in discomfort and fear of differences. We strive to be curious and open to learning about them, practicing acceptance as much as possible. Through curiosity and learning, we can then encourage each other's growth and development. Does that sound easy to do? No, it isn't. For almost all of us, it is hard always to welcome difference with curiosity, learning, and acceptance. We all have opinions and biases that intrude and limit our ability to listen and respond. Few of us can listen attentively and thoughtfully to Maddow and Sam Harris, as well as Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. Bonus points for liberals who can do that with this president. To grow and develop in this area, we need social tools to help. This is one of the reasons we've developed a congregational covenant. The covenant puts into words our implicit aspirations for how we want to be together. It tells those new to our congregation our culture of relationship and communication. And when we deviate from it, it serves as a reminder for who we are striving to become. Another way we are aspiring to build stronger community here is getting better at navigating conflict. Nationally, during the last 4 years, we see the failure of working through conflict around diversity in broad relief. The president has made hostility to immigrants his signature issue. Rather than address the issues that bring people to our borders, just build a wall and keep them out. Whether Islamophobia or state rejection of Medicaid funding or the Affordable Care Act, or support for ICE raids, to racism and homophobia, many Americans resist the idea of a pluralistic democracy. It is important for us to pause here and have a little humility. Encountering difference isn't easy and often in surprising ways. I hear about congregations that are making good progress on increasing diversity. I was interested to learn that conflict goes up as well. Implicit norms of the congregation get surfaced and challenged. Unitarian Universalists have used unspoken social norms rather than creeds to say who is in and who is out. Confronting them makes people uncomfortable, as well it should. With a potential covenant explicitly defining our aspirations, we need to get skilled at working through the rough patches, the conflicts that develop when our reality doesn't match our aspirations. My hope is we see this as a positive, not a negative. The mismatch is an opportunity for systemic change. Those changes will assist our congregation to grow and develop into those aspirations. Rather than focus on individual transgressions, let us focus on our implicit culture as a congregation. Let us not get distracted by seeking to identify who is right and who is wrong. The goal needs to be building stronger community that animates our values and principles. Each conflict, then, makes us stronger and more vibrant, rather than dividing and weakening us. Each conflict is an opportunity for growth and development, to be welcomed rather than feared. To navigate conflict well, we need social tools. A powerful tool in my toolbox comes from Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication methods. A powerful method and a powerful element of that toolbox is recognizing all of us are driven by our needs. We feel good when our needs are getting met. We don't feel great when our needs are not getting met. What is hidden in plain sight about our needs is their universal quality. I can make a list of needs like food, shelter, clothing, autonomy, affection, consideration, play, and safety. And each one has unconditional value for all of us. Where problems develop is through how we go about getting them met. When I understand the needs that are driving your behavior, I can identify with you and that need that I value too. When that happens, I can authentically connect with you in helping you get that need met. The misery of the world is built on conflicting strategies to get our compelling needs met. Good conflict resolution process uses tools like this to help people connect in their basic humanity and recognize the other's inherent worth and dignity. Another way to communicate that creates the context for appreciative, respectful communication is the use of non-harming speech. Many of us use language that others experience as harmful and perpetuating systemic oppression. The UU article about transgender people was experienced that way a couple of years ago. Clearly, there wasn't an intent to harm, but harm was the impact of the article. The authors were carriers of systemic oppression without being conscious of it, and even resistant to hearing about it. The systemic approach to resolving this conflict by Susan Frederick Gray was a huge change from 50 years ago, when our predominantly male clergy dismissed using gender-inclusive language as unnecessary. Attentiveness to learning about and modifying our speech can make a positive difference. This is an example of what is missing in the daily barrage of abuse flowing from the president's Twitter accounts. You are either a loyal follower, deserving high praise, or a loser. What we are practicing in our congregations is learning how to better embrace diversity is the very same thing that will be needed in our society as we increasingly become a pluralistic democracy. Those demographic changes are not slowing down. The toxic stew of hate, deception, exploitation, and dehumanizing speech common in social media needs to be moderated to prevent further polarization. We've learned by now that anonymous speech on the internet does much more harm than good. Everyone needs to be accountable for what they post, and the social media platforms need to be accountable for what they propagate. We need pro-social social media platforms that can create the positive connections that weave together the threads of diversity, of community, to demonstrate for all the beauty of human diversity. Using skillful social tools and using Unitarian Universalist values that affirm the human spirit can build a healthier democracy. This work is independent of political philosophy. It is affirmative of the individual and the community. Learning how to work through and embrace difference is the evolutionary task of our times. Can we accept this challenge as a nation? I believe we can. As Harry Emerson Fosdick put it, democracy is based upon the conviction that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people. In Noam Chomsky's words, in this possibly terminal phase of human existence, democracy and freedom are more than just ideals to be valued. They may be essential to survival. May we accept the challenge to support the growth and development of American democracy for the good of all. So be it.
An important way we celebrate life each Sunday is by offering an opportunity to practice generosity. Members and friends support our congregation with an annual pledge paid throughout the year. Another way to support the good work of this congregation is by making a generous contribution via one of the options shown on the next slide. You can click on the tiny URL link now in the chat window to contribute, or you can send a text to the number shown on the screen. The examples on the slide show how to label your text to indicate the amount and purpose or intent of your gift. We must now say goodbye to our Facebook friends, but we hope to see you back next week, and you can consider joining us on Zoom the next time by visiting albanyuu.org. The offertory music is America the Beautiful by S.A. Ward and K.L. Bates. We enjoy welcoming guests and visitors to our service. If you are a guest or a visitor and would like to tell us who you are and where you're from, you can click unmute. We'll click on the blue raise hand symbol in the participant window. Our technician will unmute you and invite you to speak. You may also, or instead, click on the visitor link you'll now find in the chat window.
I don't see any guests looking for introduction at the moment.
Well, in case you're there and haven't identified yourself, thank you. And we welcome all who joined us today, whether they acknowledge it or not. If you'd like to learn more about our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, you can find in the participant window someone with the word welcome before their name. You can reach out to that person privately in the chat window now or after the service. We welcome the chance to greet each other. In our Zoom format, this is done through virtual breakout rooms. You can say hello there and share your name and a few words of chat. This will last about a minute and a half, and then we'll all come back together again. I'm not going to join any. I'm not going to join any.
I'm wondering about the problem with sound. I'm speaking without, I had original sound on, and I think that might have been my problem.
Sound better now.
So now I'm going to go back to original sound.
Okay.
So now I'm on original sound. Is the
Doesn't
sound about the same?
Yeah, it kind of does actually.
me.
Yeah. You see, this is the part that I don't understand.
Yeah, I've been getting texts throughout the service that the sound is really, it's wacky today. Like some segments sound really loud and some are really soft.
Yeah, because I was noticing, yeah, Leah was plenty loud.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't understand why I don't sound the same as she does.
Yeah, you were when you first came back on after Leah's story, you could hardly hear you.
That's so funny because I'm not experiencing that at all.
So you're hearing me just the same as normal.
Yep. I'm
Isn't
not
that-
having any problem hearing you. So that's the weird thing to me too. I think Allison Hart made an interesting point too. I think, headphones do make a difference. But
Right.
when you have couples who are listening together, that's clearly not an option. So,
Well, some of the people who are mentioning the concern are people with hearing impairment.
They are, but it's really interesting that you're not experiencing that. I don't use headphones and you do, Kristen. So I wonder if that is a difference.
Well, and
You
you
know.
also have some hearing impairment too. So
I do, but I can tell there's a huge difference between the sound of the different segments today.
huh, interesting.
yeah.
To me, that Elena Karpov was much quieter than everything else.
Yeah,
That was-
her volume was way too low.
Well, you saw
And we
Randy's-
boosted that.
Yeah.
We boosted that volume when it was submitted was even lower than that.
Yeah. It probably needed to go even more.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the second and third
I
time.
think the suggestions though of the headphones and the speakers were really, really good suggestions. So it's frustrating.
Same room,
Yeah,
same meeting. So you and John are in a different breakout room.
we're a different, actually, we're a different computer, so we're different.
Same room.
Yeah, John, I hear you just fine. How's my sound for you right now?
Apparently not so good. No, I'm teasing.
Well,
hear-
he's on mute too.
Yeah. I was just teasing you, John.
Tammy, do you want me adding people to the attendance list who are not on the list?
Yes,
Oh, okay. So I haven't been doing that. I apologize.
That's
I
okay.
will.
That's all right.
I
Well,
just wasn't sure. And we don't want to keep them separated. We'll just keep everybody all together.
everybody in this, yep, exactly.
I was speaking pretty loud for the sermon. Was that helpful? Did you notice a difference?
The sermon, I thought that was what was quiet. It
That was quiet.
I thought it was.
I was
Everybody's back,
shouting.
folks.
Yeah.
All right,
Time
we're
for,
back.
All right.
Oh,
This is the time set aside in our service for sharing significant personal milestones in our lives. There are three ways.
oops.
There are three ways.
Uh-oh.
There are three ways to share a joy or sorrow. The first option is to type your joy or sorrow in the chat window. Please put the words, quote, read aloud at the beginning of the message if you would like us to do that. Also, please consider connecting privately in the chat with a pastoral care associate. You may identify the ones on duty today in the participant window. Look for PCA before their name.
Yeah.
Second option is to click the blue raise hand symbol in the participant window. Our technician will unmute you and invite you to speak your joy or sorrow. The third option is to submit a joy or sorrow using our website before noon on Friday prior to the service. We'll begin by reading those that were submitted this past week. Then we'll hear the spoken joys and sorrows, followed by the chat entries that request to be read aloud.
We'll start with Linda Hunt. Go ahead, Linda, and unmute yourself.
Hi, my joy is that I shared the reunion of my guide dog Ada with her puppy raisers, where she will live out her golden retirement years in North Carolina. And my second joy is that Governor Cuomo created an exception to the quarantine rule that if you travel to another state and return to New York in the same day, you don't have to quarantine.
All right, next we go to Valerie and Natalie Plemondon. I'll unmute you and go ahead.
Good morning. I have a joy. I lost 2 teeth in 3 days. And my dad had surgery, knee surgery a few weeks ago, and he's doing better.
Tooth Fairy was busy this week.
Great, thank you. And moving on, we are Michelle DeRosier. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Michelle, you can go ahead. Your sound didn't come on through. Go ahead again. I'm sorry, Michelle. Perhaps you can put it in the chat. We haven't been able to hear you. Moving on, Eric, can you do the chat joys and sorrows, please?
Sure. From Randy Rosette. Sharon Babila came through major surgery this week, and tomorrow she is on her way to Sunnyview for a week of intensive rehab. Please send Sharon positive thoughts for a complete recovery. From Barb Manning, Arden doctor was in the hospital again and just went home yesterday. Maryland doctor fell a week ago and had to have stitches in her head. Sorry to hear that. From Kristen Abbas, my dear college friend Chris just lost his fiance Wade to a heart attack 3 days ago. Chris himself had just gotten out of the hospital a week ago after a prolonged stay due to a head injury. And from Annika Pfluger, congratulations to my son, Danny, who just got his first college acceptance letter yesterday. I couldn't be more proud of his hard work and perseverance towards reaching his goals. Excellent. Appears to be it. For all the joys and sorrows left unspoken, let us hold them in our hearts and in our minds.
Oops.
Let us turn inward one last time for these words of prayerful affirmation. In this time of heightened tension and polarization, the eyes narrow and the brow furrows when we see signs of political opponents in our neighbor's yard. The heart rate elevates and the mouth frowns when the image of political opponents appear on our screens, or their voices cause painful sensations in our ears. Let us now put politics aside for just this moment and remember the humanity of those with whom we disagree. Can we find a way to both hold our core convictions that drive our choices and recognize others have different priorities and values? Can we experience this dissonance without hate, but with curiosity, and discover they share with us other priorities and values? Can we put aside our assumptions and expectations and find out who that neighbor really is in their full humanity? Can we hold open the possibility that they may change and they may change us? May we hold open the possibility that we can learn from and empathize with each other, that we can influence each other, that it may be possible for us to even love each other when right now we can't even imagine it. May we find a way to hold open our hearts at least a crack for the unexpected to surprise us and the spirit of life to move in, through, and between us. May it be so, and amen.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in these words. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our benediction this morning is by Heather Ryan Starr. May whatever gatherings or activities we engage in this Sunday afternoon help restore us, our connections to one another, our sense of hope, beauty, and fun in this world, our deep knowing that we have to take care of ourselves and each other with love and joy if we are to soulfully survive the world's mayhem. We would like to acknowledge our thanks this morning for our ushers, Kristen Abbas, Kathy Harris, Tammy Hathaway, and Annika Pfluger. Our pastoral care associates are Donna Meixner and Eric Van Housen. Our welcomer has been Barb Manning. Our service associate is myself, John Newell. Our musician has been Elena Karpov, and we have obtained immensely important office support from Sapphire Korea and our technical supporter, Chris Jensen.